Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am just waiting for a few more people to join us. I see the number of attendees going up very quickly, so I'll just give it a few seconds and then we can start our session. Okay, I think we're ready to go. So good afternoon. My name is Morag Neath and I'm Deputy Head of the English Interpretation Unit at the European Commission in Brussels. Today's session, as you know, is on the subject of why learning foreign languages is not a waste of young people's time, despite a world dominated by English. And I have here with me for this session 3 interpreter colleagues and a translator colleague from the European institutions. We have with us Beth Black from the European Commission, Lydia from the European Court of Justice, Lorraine Regan from the European Parliament, and Paul Kay, who's from the Translation Service at the European Commission. So without any further ado, I would like to launch a poll in order to try to gauge our audience today. So you will see pop up on your screen a poll. I'm just going to launch that now, and I'll give you a few seconds to answer it, and then we'll close that and I'll launch a second poll. Okay, well, I think I can close the poll there. I see that 310, 11, 12 people have answered, and I will share the results. So this is interesting to see. We have a very, very, very small group of people, just 4% who only speak 1 language. We have 19% speak 2 languages. And very interestingly, huge number, 41% of you speak 3 languages and 36% 4 or more. So that's a very interesting start. And I will now share the second poll with you. And this is whether or not you're a native English speaker. Okay, I shall end it there. Very interesting. We've got a split almost down the middle. So about half of you are native English speakers and half of you have another mother tongue. Okay, thanks very much for that. I'd now like to hand the floor across to my colleague, Beth Black, who will start us off with this session. Beth, over to you.
Thanks, Morag. Can you all hear me fine? So, hi everyone, and thanks for joining us for the session today. My name's Beth Black. I'm from Chester in the UK, and I'm currently speaking to you from Brussels, where I work full-time as an interpreter for the EU. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I got into languages quite early on in life, and I always found them fascinating. I went on to study languages at university. So I did an undergraduate degree in French and German at Durham University in the UK. And as part of that course, I did a year abroad where I actually ended up teaching English in France and Germany. And that showed me how much language learning is valued there and helped me to see what the UK could maybe learn from other countries. But in the end, I decided I wanted to keep learning languages, partly because it's just fun. And that drew me to the profession of interpreting. To train as an interpreter, I did a combined master's course at Bath in the UK. And that was good because it allowed me to try out both written translation and spoken live translation or interpreting. And that's what I specialize in now. And since moving over here to Belgium, I've learned one of the national languages, Dutch, and I've also recently started learning Italian, which I also really love, although it's a bit of a challenge right now because I'm at beginner level. So, to pick up on the tagline for today's session, I'm sure, based on the poll results and based on the fact that you're here at the London Language Show, that you know that learning languages could never be a waste of your time. So what do I get out of it? I mean, I've been able to visit lots of amazing countries, and I found that when you're not just reliant on English as a common language, as a lingua franca, you can figure out what's going on so much quicker. You might even end up helping people out and acting as a bit of a tour guide for a group of friends. But alongside that, I found that you can really connect with people from other countries much better by speaking their language. And you can even then use that language, the connection it gives you, to bridge other divides, like cultural, political divides. And I think that people really appreciate it when you've gone to the effort of learning their language. And that's something that that the British author John le Carré recognized, and he wrote about it in this really good article which was published in The Guardian a few years ago. He said, "The decision to learn a foreign language is an act of friendship. It's like holding out your hand." He said it's not just a route to negotiation, it's also a way to get to know you better, to draw closer to you and your culture, your social manners, and your way of thinking. He also said a lot of very interesting things in the whole article, which I can recommend. Now, there are other speakers who can tell you about how languages will give your CV the edge, how it can open doors for you in your professional life. But that's not really what I want to focus on today. I want to look at why would you learn multiple languages in a world dominated by English? Because I think when we talk about a world dominated by English, that world's often the world of big business or international affairs, maybe American TV and movies. But that's not the whole world. That leaves out so much. For me, it leaves out French songs, the surprising beauty of German poetry, hilarious Dutch expressions, and loads of delicious sounding Italian culinary vocab. And so I found when you step outside the bubble of international English speaking people, you quickly realize how many people don't actually speak English. And that's what I realized myself when I ended up in Romania one summer, or to be more precise, Transylvania. I was there with my boyfriend, who speaks fluent Romanian, and we were in a tiny village in the middle of nowhere in the countryside. And he was getting on really well with all the locals, chatting away, having a great time. And naturally, I felt a bit left out until we found out that most of the people from this tiny village also speak fluent German because of this really interesting part of their history where there were German settlers who went there in the 11th century, and the language has survived in Romania. And so they were really surprised I could speak German. And we got chatting away, and we all got along like a house on fire. And since that summer, we've gone back every year, and we've been able to speak. Being able to speak their ancestral language really helped me to get to know this lovely group of German-speaking Romanians, and also to learn a lot more about their fascinating history and the culture in the region. So, to answer the question that we started this session with, why should you learn languages? I'd say because it might help you make friends in unexpected places.
Thanks very much for that, Beth. I think that was very interesting. It's already sparked several questions, which we'll come back to later. Please do keep feeding your questions into either the Q&A or the chat. I'd now like to give the floor to Paul Kay from the Translation Service.
Classic mistake. After listening to Beth there, I'm not sure there's much more to say. Case closed, I would say. My name's Paul. I work as a translator for the European Commission. I come from Bolton in the northwest of England. Although normally I should be at this moment working in Brussels, I'm actually working from a room in London. A little bit about me. Languages were my favorite thing at school. I was quite good at French. I went on French exchanges. But I ended up studying science at university, but had the great luck to get on a year abroad under the Erasmus scheme, studying science, biology in France, and that brought my French up to a good level. After I graduated, I went to teach English in Slovakia, in what we used to call Eastern Europe, now Central Europe. And I threw myself into learning that language, and I stayed for a few years and got to know the language pretty well. I was fairly fluent by the time I left. And then I came back to the UK, did some more study, spent 10 years as an environment policy journalist, but all the time I was doing that, I was sort of keeping up with my love of languages and trying to learn other languages. And then eventually, 12 years ago, I got a job working as a translator for the European Commission, initially using French and Slovak. But the great thing about working in the EU bureaucracy is that we get to learn new languages and to use them. So I've had the pleasure of learning several other languages to use them in my job. Why is learning languages not a waste of your time if you're a young person? I think learning languages makes your life better, and it makes you a better person. It makes life better by enriching it in so many different ways. I mean, mainly by creating opportunities and giving you more fun in your work life and your personal life. An example in my working life a few years ago, not long after I'd come back from Slovakia, I got a job working as an interpreter for Manchester United. Now, I'm not a Manchester United fan, but I'm a big football fan. I support a much better team, Bolton Wanderers. But I got a job working for Manchester United as an interpreter during one of their Champions League matches against a team from Slovakia, and during that I had to interpret for Bobby Charlton. The older people in the room will remember that name, and Alex Ferguson, the manager at the time. It was a fabulous experience, something I'll never forget. I wouldn't have had it if I hadn't learned languages. So that's one opportunity that I got through having learned languages that I wouldn't have done either otherwise. I've got similar travel experiences to the ones that Beth talked about, so I won't waste time on those. But I think as well as giving you more opportunities in your own life, I think it makes you a better person. It adds an extra dimension to your character and your personality. It makes you a more understanding, empathetic person. I think it makes you more intelligent, frankly, if you learn languages. The title of the presentation, the title of the session today, I think implicitly assumes or implicitly addresses English speakers who don't have other languages or might be wondering why they might need to know other languages. And you could say that the world is speaking English, so we don't need to speak English anymore. I can access everything I want. I mean, Beth has hinted at the range of things that are out there that don't come to us through the English language. But I think if you adopt that attitude, English is enough, then you end up with a monodimensional view of the world, a very passive view of the world in which other people are deciding what you know, what you experience, and how you experience it, because they're the ones that decide whether it should be put into English in a form that you understand it. If you go beyond that and learn other languages, you get a much more rounded, deeper view of the world. And I think, and I'll wrap up because my time's nearly up, I think also when you learn other languages, it sort of bounces back on your own language. So the more you know of other languages, the better you understand your own native language, and the better you are able to use it, I think, ultimately. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks very much, Paul. Thank you. Again, very interesting. So I'll now hand over to Lydia from the court. Lydia. I'm sorry, Lydia, you're muted.
Hello, you can hear me now, I guess. Sorry, I got off to a very bad start there. That's me and technology. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being with us. My name is Lydia, and I work for the Court of Justice in Luxembourg, which is a European institution which does use interpreters to a much lesser extent than the other ones represented here. More about that later, though. I want to start by telling you how I began with languages. I grew up in a multilingual household. I was born in the UK, in Hertfordshire, just north of London. My mother was Italian, my father was Polish, and so I grew up speaking English and Italian effectively. So the seeds of my love of languages were sown at a very early age. And in fact, so were the seeds of my subsequent career, because already when I was quite small, and we used to spend all our summer holidays in Italy with my mother's side of the family, my father, whose Italian wasn't all that good, felt rather left out of the conversation very often. And I was the one who used to help him out by translating what he said for our friends in Italy and translating what they answered back to him. And my parents said to me, "Oh, you should be an interpreter. You can earn quite a lot of money doing that." And so the interpreter stuck in my mind, and that was it. And I've never looked back. I've been an interpreter all my life with no regrets whatsoever. And it's an inspiring career to have. I have chosen a completely language career because that's absolutely what I wanted to do. However, that doesn't mean that learning and speaking one or several extra languages doesn't open up all sorts of other doors. Beth touched on this when she spoke to you first. It's not just a question of becoming an interpreter or a translator or a language teacher, although those are inspiring careers in themselves. Speaking an extra language impresses people in any career that you might choose. If you want to sell something to somebody, for example, and you can communicate with them in other countries in their own language, they'll be more impressed with you than if you try and speak English more loudly and assume that they will understand what you're saying. For example, if you want to make a career of law, for example, I encounter a lot of lawyers in my daily life, as you can imagine, here at the court. They all speak several languages here, but even the ones who come from the UK to appear here at the court very often know French or some other language, and it helps them in their career because in this global world, legal cases come from everywhere. There are multinational companies with headquarters all over the world in countries which speak languages other than English, and it's always a help. If you want to work in the travel industry, it goes without saying that it's useful to have other languages so that you can visit the countries that your company might wish to organize tours to, and get to know the local people, get to know the local culture, get to know the best places to go. And that would be your job if you worked in the travel industry as a guide or as a rep. So those are just 3 examples of ways in which learning another language could be useful and inspiring and impressive, make you impressive for other people. And let's not just talk about careers. No, it's fun, as Paul and Beth have already said. You can have a lot more fun if you like traveling, and if you go to a country where you can speak the language of the local people. You can chat to them in the bar. You can chat to your guide, who might be a local guide. This happened to me in Cuba one time. we had a wonderful local guide who took us walking up in the mountains and was pointing out all these medicinal plants and wild flowers and so on, and telling us how they were used. And he could only speak Spanish. He was a local farming and mountaineer guy who, so I helped everybody out because it was such interesting information, such interesting local knowledge, which I could chat to him about because I happen to know Spanish. And that's just one example. Practical purposes as well. If you get stuck at a queue in Italy, for example, with on a ski charter and it's delayed, if you can go right up to the front of the queue with everybody's passports and speak Italian to the person at the at the desk, you get through before everybody else and don't miss your flight. So I can see that my time is now running out as well, so I won't hold you up any further, but I hope I've managed to explain why it's undoubtedly not a waste of time to learn other languages. From every point of view, it broadens all your horizons. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lydia. And last but not least, I'd like to give the floor to Lorraine.
Hi, good afternoon to you all. My name is Lorraine Regan. I work as a staff interpreter at the European Parliament in the English booth. I will quickly just go through my own languages, give you a bit of my own background. And I'm an English native speaker. Unlike Lydia, I grew up very much in a monolingual environment. I did start learning Irish at a young age when my family moved back to Ireland when I was 8. But I didn't live in a Gaeltacht area, so English was very much my mother tongue. And I didn't pursue Irish after secondary school. I studied French and German at university. I took an applied, a BA in applied languages, French and German. And after that, I spent a couple of years living and working abroad to consolidate my languages. So I did a bit of English language teaching, picked up some work as a précis writer, and also worked as a translator. And then after a few years, I went back to academic life to complete a postgrad diploma in conference interpreting in London, actually. It was still with French and German. So when I graduated, Brussels seemed like the natural choice to seek accreditation and start freelancing. That's what I did. And then in 2008, I joined the staff at the European Parliament. And over that time, while I've been working as an interpreter, I've also been building my language combination, learning other languages, Spanish first, and then more recently Dutch. So I now work from 4 languages into English. Now, turning to the title of the panel today, why learning languages is not a waste of your time, not a waste of young people's time in a world dominated by English. As Beth hinted, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the professional asset that I feel languages can prove to be for anyone. And obviously, for me as an interpreter, for Beth and for Lydia, for Morag, for Paul, languages are essential to the job we do every day. In my case, at the European Parliament, I work for MEPs. They are elected on the basis of their politics, their platform. They do not have to speak a language other than their mother tongue. They are entitled to complete and to conduct parliamentary business in that language. And I am often assigned to meetings dominated by, say, German or Spanish, where I feel that my languages really help me to facilitate communication in those settings. But it's not just for those traditional languages careers that knowledge of a foreign language can prove to be a professional asset. If you are interested in working in the EU at all across any field, be it IT, law, finance, a specific policy area, such as transport or the environment, and let me tell you, English native speakers are in great demand, but across any of those areas, you also need to demonstrate an ability to work in one more EU language to apply for a job. There's also the private sector, where knowledge of a foreign language is really useful. Just to give you a couple of specific examples that I came across when I was studying, I knew quite a few fellow students who were pursuing combined degrees, so modern languages with a specific subject such as law or science or finance. And in all those cases, the language component of the degree actually really offered an edge to those students. Two examples spring to mind. I knew one girl who was studying French and law. Because of the French part of her degree, she was eligible to apply for a Swiss scholarship to spend a year studying in Geneva. And over that time, got to witness firsthand the work of the United Nations organizations there, the Red Cross. It was an opportunity to network and to acquire work experience. I also knew a group of students taking a degree in German and chemistry, and part of that degree course involved them spending a year abroad in Germany, where the university had negotiated a number of work placements for them with Siemens. So by the time they'd graduated, they already had hands-on experience with a major multinational player in the field, and that really set their CVs apart. I could go on at length, but I see I'm running out of time, and you've already heard so many convincing arguments about why learning languages also enriches your life. So I think I'm going to leave it at that, and hopefully we look forward to your questions now.
Well, there's certainly been plenty of questions coming in. I'd like to thank all the panelists for their initial introductory statements. And I suggest that we move straight on to the questions. So if I refer here to the Q&A, we have the first question, which is cropped up in the chat as well, from Anthony Vallion, asking whether with Brexit, presumably British people without EU passports may have been eligible to work with EU institutions unless already there. But can these people still work as interpreters for embassies or other organisations in Brussels, Strasbourg and Luxembourg? Who can I give the floor to on that point? Lydia.
Remember to unmute myself this time. Thank you for that question. I'm going to give you a bit of a skivy answer, and maybe my colleagues would like to come in and answer it better. What I was going to say was that we also have another panel organised tomorrow at 5 p.m. British time, which concerns exactly the future of English in the EU after Brexit. So anybody that has specific questions to ask about Brexit and how it's going to work to be a UK national linguist or UK national working there, could I recommend that you register for panel 3, which is that's the absolute focus. I can tell you very briefly that UK people who solely have UK passports will not be able to work as permanent staff in the EU institutions. But for interpreters, we use a lot of freelance interpreters, and they can be of any nationality. We already, even before Brexit, we used American colleagues, Canadians, and so on. I don't know if my colleagues would like to add something about that.
No, I think that answers the question very clearly, Lydia. And as we've got lots of questions, I'd like to suggest we take the next one, which is about how to get a job in the European institutions. Do you have any tips, Beth, in particular? It's always been my dream, and I'm proficient in several languages, but I never get past the first round of the concours due to my poor math skills. Any advice there?
I can certainly relate about the difficulty of passing the concours, which is the EU's recruitment process, and those tricky maths questions. I mean, it's not my forte. For most linguists, maths isn't their forte either. I mean, that's a separate process. But for anyone who is generally interested in working at the institutions or even studying to become an interpreter, there are lots of good courses out there, not just in the UK. It really depends on what your language what your native language is, which languages you know and want to interpret from and into. So hopefully you'll be able to find more useful information about that using the link that we'll share at the end of the talk as well. But generally, I would say when I had to pass tests and an internal competition to get over the parts of it that were not the most natural thing for me, I just had to practice a lot. And the same goes for interpreting. When I was training, we practiced really, really hard through a one-year course and spent a lot of our free time just focused on that. So I think that's the top tip I would give. I don't know if other people, Paul, would you like to say something?
Yes, Paul, let me give the floor to you.
I just like Lydia, just to give a plug for a session I'm doing tomorrow at 12:30 and then again on Sunday at 1:30 UK time on working as a translator in the EU, and I'll go into these things in more detail. But for doing those initial tests, practice, 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 and it comes.
Okay, thanks very much. Right, I have an interesting question here about how do you think is the best way to go about learning a new language as an adult? Language learning apps, online classes of any use? Who would like to take that question? Lorraine?
Thanks for that question. It's a challenge, definitely, mainly because what I found is that when you've already started working, you have less time to devote to language learning. I actually started learning German at university level, so technically almost an adult. I was 17 when I started uni. But for that 4-year period, particularly the first 2 years, we had so much time to devote to German, and then I spent my year abroad. And there was an opportunity to really soak up the language and culture. It does get harder as an adult because you have to juggle so many other things. I do personally firmly believe in getting the basics right, put the time in to get your head round the grammar and the system. Beyond that, exposure to the language, travel there if you can. Podcasts are invaluable, and nowadays via the internet there is so much we can do to immerse ourselves in a language even if we're not physically in the country. Although, let's be honest, that is one of the joys of learning a language. So why would you want to deprive yourself of that opportunity if you can at all travel to the country of, or the countries of the language you're learning?
Thanks, Lorraine. Paul again?
Yes, all of those modern ways, apps. I listen to the radio a lot when I'm learning new languages. I've been trying very, very slowly and outside work where I'm lucky enough to learn lots of languages for work, but I've been trying to learn Japanese myself in my spare time. And I signed up to go to old-fashioned classes where I went and sat with other people in a classroom with a teacher, and that was really good at keeping the discipline, having weekly homework, knowing that I had a date to go to a class. That meant that I stuck with it, whereas otherwise in a busy life I might not have done, and I might have said, oh, I can spend time on that tomorrow. So yeah, there's all those different ways you can attack it, but I would recommend still, if you can, and if you're lucky enough to have classes, physical classes in a language that you've got access to, then do that as well.
Okay, thanks very much. I have a couple of questions from Joe Hall, who's asked whether anybody has any gems of reason to give my Year 9 students choosing their options. So many of them are putting Spanish as their alternative choice if they're not able to get their first choice. And she also asked about, just basically how to motivate 13-year-olds to learn languages. Who would like to address that question? Beth?
I taught English abroad to mainly to secondary school children, but also younger pupils. And I found that there are so many inventive ways out there. And this was before all of the technology was available that we have today. But I think just making it fun and showing them that there's this whole culture out there that they'll have access to as if they, were sort of secret agent, or as if it were something just for them that they can really benefit from. I think that's a really good way to motivate younger people. And often through TV, I learn a lot through TV, either watching things with subtitles on, or with in Spanish with Spanish subtitles. And the language options in streaming services like Netflix are getting better and better. And so that is one way to teach. I taught English using episodes from my favorite comedy shows. I taught English, one memorable lesson where we created a cricket game in the classroom. I had to learn about the rules of cricket to teach that one, because I didn't know before. But making it fun and using the resources that are available.
Okay, thanks very much, Beth. We have a couple of questions here regarding advice for anybody who might like to study conference interpreting. What other skills are needed alongside the language skills? And is there any particular path that you would recommend? Whilst I give the floor to somebody to answer that question, I'm actually going to share a slide which shows the contact details if you want to get more information. So I'll share that because we are coming towards the end of our session. So who can I give the floor to on that particular question? Lorraine?
I can start, and I'm sure that Beth, Lydia and Paul will be able to add other gems and tips. I feel that in terms of the skills required, other than the language skills, a genuine curiosity in a range of subjects. One of the reasons I was drawn to translation and interpreting was I actually really enjoyed science and accountancy at university and history. And I felt that the advantage with translation and interpreting was I could keep up my interest in all those different fields. And it does prove to be very useful when preparing a text to translate or the meetings where we interpret. I'd also say a sense of confidence and ability to hold your nerve. And that is something that some people come by naturally. For me personally, that was something that I developed over time, and I would not have felt ready to pursue interpreting immediately after graduation. I definitely needed a couple of years working, consolidating my languages and acquiring a bit of life experience. That has stood me in good stead, I've found. But I'm sure that the others would like to chip in as well on this one.
Would any of the others like to add anything? Yeah, Lydia?
Yes, of course, I fully agree with what Lorraine has put forward. I would also stress a love of communicating. You've got to love getting a message across to people, not just your own, because when you're an interpreter, in fact, what you're doing is getting somebody else's message across. So you are a bit of an actor at the same time. So you've got to have a really open mind, a really broad open mind, so that you can take in the message that's coming into your head and then express it in your own language with a love that you really have to want to get it across. And that's a help. Another important thing is to have a solid A language, as we call it, mother tongue, because if a foreign language is coming into your ears at top speed, you've got to have the reserves to be able to get the message out in your own language. Love of communication, though, is key as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks very much. I think we can take one last question and then we'll draw this session to a close, and I'll let all the panelists say their final bit. We have one question here from Luke Moore. We're preaching to the converted here. How do we spread this message to get teenagers to really buy into this? Does it come from the government, or is this incumbent upon the major bodies like SEOL in the UK to spread this key message? Who would like to answer that? Lorraine?
Off the cuff, because it is a tricky question and I'm not sure we're going to be able to solve it here today, but I do think that it has to come from more than government sources. I think that promoting a love of languages, an interest in languages, comes from making it fun. The one example that springs to mind for me is the shift in perception towards Irish in Ireland compared to when I was growing up, and it was largely seen as a subject you prepared for an exam. And when they launched a TV station in Irish and had a couple of fun, interactive, youth-oriented programs there, that seemed to encourage younger people to engage more with the language, led to quite a lot of pop songs being translated into Irish, people getting interested in that way. So I think languages need to be seen as fun and to be effective tools for communication, because then they're relevant outside a classroom.
Well, I think that says it very well. We are running out of time, so I'm going to give each of the speakers briefly a few seconds to just share their final messages with us. This has been recorded, by the way. There's been questions about whether you can access afterwards. You will need to contact the London Language Show organisers through the website to find out how you access the recordings. Beth, final word?
Why should you learn foreign languages? To connect with other people.
Thank you. Lydia?
Nelson Mandela said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. And that's why you should also learn other languages.
Thank you, Lydia. Paul?
Yeah, knowing English is good, but as the rest of the world improves its English and comes to regard it as kind of a second native language, then just knowing English becomes a declining asset. And the only way you can counter that and add to your value is to learn other languages.
Thanks, Paul. And Lorraine?
I would simply say that for me, learning a language and the travel that both requires and offers is character building. I think learning another language pushes you out of your comfort zone, and that is both rewarding and, yes, character building.
Okay, well, thanks very much to all my panelists this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed this session. I've been following all of the comments in the chat. I'm sorry we weren't able to answer each and every question, but I hope we've answered many of them for you. Thank you very much and have a good afternoon. Goodbye.